The new Final Fantasy VII Rebirth trailer finally dropped, and oh my god, dude, it's mind-blowing. Let's get right into it. We open on the aftermath of Final Fantasy VII Remake's ending. Entire sectors of Midgar are in ruins, but more significantly, Barret, Tifa, Red 13, and Aerith are dead. It's a hell of a way to start your trailer, but what does it mean? Like many people, my initial takeaway from Remake's ending was that by defeating the Whispers, who exist to preserve the course of destiny, the party created a second timeline. In this timeline, Zack isn't killed by a Shinra hit squad. Instead, he survives and accompanies Cloud to Midgar. Based on what we see in this trailer, the possibility that Zack is alive in a second timeline, while our team remains in their own, is still valid. In the ending to the intermission DLC, Zack returns to Aerith's church, but instead of reuniting with his long-lost love, he finds the church full of stricken people. Zack's joy at finally returning quickly changes into something else. There's an ominous tone to the scene that fits the devastating imagery of our beloved hero's bodies being pulled from the destruction. It's entirely possible that Zack is the one watching this news report. Recognizing Aerith could kickstart a journey to uncover the truth of what really happened to her. This two timelines theory is cool, but there's another possibility that I like even more. I first saw this idea put forth by Schrodinger's baby seal, so credit to that guy, he does fantastic work. Instead of two timelines, what if there's still just one? At the end of Remake, the party enters the Singularity, defeats the Whispers, and emerges into an altered timeline. A timeline where Zack never died. Killing off the Barret, Tifa, Red 13, and Aerith native to this timeline keeps things clean by removing the messy prospect of multiple versions of the same character. That leaves one huge question though. Where is Cloud? We don't see his body being pulled from the rubble. No body, no death, right? If the Cloud native to this altered timeline didn't die, then he's still out there somewhere. In order to answer this question, let's skip ahead in the trailer. Just as we did in Remake, we get a brief glimpse of the hooded men making their way to the northern crater for the reunion. But this time, we hear a familiar voice and see a shock of distinctive blonde hair poking out from underneath the hood. This is Cloud. Now, there are a lot of things that could be happening here. It could be a hallucination. It could be Sephiroth or Jenova messing with Cloud's mind, showing him false visions. But what if this is the second Cloud, the one native to the altered timeline? If Zack survives, that means Cloud never inherits the Buster Sword. He doesn't become Zack's living legacy, and he doesn't have to go on by himself. With Zack still there to support him, maybe he never fully regains his strength. Maybe he remains weak-willed and becomes one of these hooded men drawn toward the reunion. The theme of this trailer, and one of the core themes of Final Fantasy VII, is the idea of fact versus fiction. What is real and what isn't? What do you believe happened, and what actually happened? Psychological warfare has always been among Sephiroth's preferred weapons, and this trailer ends with a chilling example. Jenova, he says, can peer into the depths of your soul and become anyone. Someone you hate, someone you fear, even someone you love. We then watch him cut down Tifa in the Nibelheim reactor 5 years prior to the beginning of FF7. He says that he killed her, that Cloud knows he killed her. So who then is this Tifa that Cloud has been traveling with? Obviously, I don't believe for a second that Tifa is actually dead. This is Sephiroth messing with Cloud's mind, as per usual. But the trailer also shows Tifa questioning Cloud. We hear her talking to Aerith, saying that he wasn't in Nibelheim 5 years ago. It's one thing for your worst enemy to contradict you, but when your beloved childhood friend is the one questioning you, that's bad news. Especially for a character who struggles so much with self-doubt as it is. Add in the presence of Zack, and potentially a second Cloud, one who's weak-willed, essentially a puppet, and you have the ingredients for a severe mental breakdown. I love the conflicts they're setting up here, not just between Cloud and Sephiroth, but between Cloud and Tifa, and within Cloud himself. I'm so excited to see how all of this comes together. One more thing about Jenova. It's so interesting to see how much she freaks out Yuffie. Maybe the purple haze around her is enough to bring up memories of Nero and trigger some PTSD, but Sephiroth says she can become basically anyone. So what if Jenova appears differently depending on the beholder? If she takes the form of those you hate and fear, it makes sense that both Cloud and Tifa would see Sephiroth. But why would Sephiroth freak Yuffie out so much? She doesn't know anything about him. What if she sees Nero instead, the psycho who murdered her brother figure Sonon? This probably isn't the case, but it's a fun possibility nonetheless. I wonder who Barret, Aerith, and Red would see. Okay, that's the major story stuff, so let's move on to gameplay. In the original FF7, you finally arrive on the world map after leaving Midgar, and there's a wonderful sense of freedom and adventure. This trailer hits those same notes, emphasizing how expansive these environments are compared to those we saw in Remake. Now, I think Remake's linearity worked well. It made sense given that the entire game takes place within the confines of a city, and it helped the game focus on what it does best: characters, story, combat, music. But now that we've left Midgar, the scope needs to broaden, and that's exactly what's happening. The world looks beautiful, alive with greenery and animal life. At first I was confused, because this stunning landscape doesn't match the barren world we saw Cloud and the crew walking through at the end of Intermission. So I think this is probably the area on the other side of the Mithril Mine. I'm no bird expert, but these look like condors, right? So it would make sense that we're in the Fort Condor area. There are several different icons on the HUD, suggesting a variety of different activities. As much as I love Remake, it's fair to say that the side quests in that game aren't particularly strong. Hopefully that's an area that Rebirth works hard to improve. Ideally, side quests should tell meaningful stories that build out the world and enrich the characters who live in it. We also get a peek at the Mithril Mines, which will probably be the game's first dungeon. I expect dungeons to still be largely linear, like they were in Remake. Although maybe there could be branching paths here and there. We see Barret and Red 13 on their own fighting a rock golem boss, while Cloud, Tifa, and Aerith encounter the Turks, including new recruit Elena. I wonder what's going on here. Was the team separated? Did they intentionally split up? There is precedent for this in Remake. In order to progress through Hojo's lab, we had to swap between two groups, of Cloud Barret and Tifa Aerith. I know a lot of people don't like that dungeon, but I think it's one of the stronger areas in the game, largely thanks to this mechanic. It's cool to play with different combinations of characters, both for their interpersonal interactions, as well as to see how they complement each other in battle. Final Fantasy VI did this even better. A couple of the late-game dungeons require you to split your characters into 3 teams, and switch between them in order to open paths forward. I'd love to see something like this implemented in Rebirth, especially as the party grows larger. Speaking of the party, we now have official confirmation of what we all knew was going to happen. Red 13 is playable, and Yuffie joins the team. Red is going to be so much fun to play. He looks really quick and dynamic. I don't know what Vengeance mode is, but it sounds sick. And after what they did with Yuffie in the Intermission DLC, she's become a favorite of mine. I'm super excited for her to join up and interact with the rest of the group. In terms of combat, this trailer was all about team-up attacks, and they look awesome. I wonder how many there will be. Does each pair of characters only have one move together? Or are there more? Can they be upgraded or powered up somehow? We've seen 2 characters team up, but what about all 3 active party members? And what are those little notches under the ATB gauge? Are they related to these team-up moves? In any case, FF7 Remake already had my favorite battle system in the series, so I can only imagine how amazing it's going to be with these additions. Another cool thing is that the team all travels together now. We see Cloud, Tifa, Aerith, and Barret riding chocobos through some ruins. I'm not sure where Red is or what him riding a chocobo would even look like. There's also a brief moment where you can spot a non-active party member loitering on the edge of battle. My biggest wish for Rebirth's battle system is for it to emulate Final Fantasy X's character swapping system. Don't make me settle on a party of 3. I want to use everyone, so give me the opportunity to swap characters in and out of battle as necessary. This would also help rectify one of the few flaws in Remake's combat, which was dealing with aerial enemies when Barret and Aerith weren't in the party. Alright, just some final details that caught my eye. Aerith's delight at stepping into the gorgeous green world outside of Midgar is really sweet. Yuffie's wearing a belt now, so no more unbuttoned shorts. Cool. Cloud juggling enemies is sick. Juggling staggered enemies in FF13 remains one of my favorite mechanics in all of Final Fantasy, so a new take on that would be amazing. Junon is huge and majestic, and how cool is it to catch a glimpse of the Highwind? Bugenhagen looks great. It's always been kind of a weird character design, but they made it work. Where's his floating ball though? The planetarium looks fantastic, and I imagine that Bugenhagen is going to be the guy who explains a lot of the big picture lore stuff going on in the story. The original Final Fantasy VII has been my favorite game since I was 9 years old, but Remake isn't too far behind. Rebirth was already my most anticipated game, but this trailer blasted my hype to a new level. It was everything I could have hoped for and more, which is basically how I feel about Remake as a whole. It's a good time to be a Final Fantasy fan.